Hey, how's it going YouTube? This is your boy Chosen, and today I'm bringing you something a little new. Usually we discuss different possible future scenarios the story could be headed towards. Just anything usually to do involving the manga in any sort of way, but today I thought it'd be a good idea to finally bring in a topic where we fully discuss the anime only. And what better way to start off than reflect Boruto on one of the worst years of this generation. Good idea. So obviously in order to actually give an opinion on this, I need to know what episodes count, from what starting point to end. After checking on Crunchyroll, I've concluded that the first episode of 2020 was Boruto episode 139 all the way to episode 180, meaning there are 3 arcs within this period that we have to take into consideration: the prison arc, the Miju Bandits arc, and the entire Ikara Actuation arc, from episode 157 until 175. If you really sit back and take in 2020 for this anime, only the Miju Bandits was the arc that was direct material from the manga. The prison arc and Actuation arc shouldn't be looked down upon though. They were both setups in their own way for the content to come. The prison arc was created to set up and extend the events of the Miju Bandits arc. The Ikara Actuation arc was created to give a proper introduction to Ikara, not in ways where we just see the members within meetings, but to see how they operate outside of them. Characters like Victor, for example, who low-key has a whole other life outside of the organization. Now, regardless of their importance, that isn't only what today's video is about. Today I want to discuss what I believe is to be the best well-made Boruto arc of 2020. So between these 3, only one can be picked. Just a heads up, for videos like these or similar ones I make in the future, this is a personal opinion. That shouldn't really matter much in this video, seeing as how I probably have a similar answer to majority watching. But yeah, these kinds of videos aren't labeled as facts, they're just opinions. Almost nobody's going to have the same answer to every question. That's just not how life works. But anyways, as you can all probably assume, yes, my favorite Boruto arc of 2020 was the Ikara Actuation arc. That started in episode 157, when Sai and Sasuke head on over to the Hidden Rain to learn more about this mysterious group. For the most part, this arc was pretty entertaining and very informative. We did have some good moments. In just the first episode, we were kind of brought upon a newer direction the anime would head towards. If I'm not mistaken, I believe episode 157 is when the director said that the show would start to become less kid-friendly. Scenes where before they would avoid showing blood or sexualizing certain characters would change from this point on, because this was the starting point of Kara's introduction. This essentially was the arc where they wanted to show its audience that, hey, things are going to go exactly like how they were before. This is when the show started to add in actual threatening stakes, not the extremely predictable ones we had before. And this gets emphasized on pretty heavily in episode 166, which we'll get into in a bit. So episode 157 is when we learn that the Ikara organization has outer members, which is pretty key information moving forward. We get introduced to the first one in Tono, who makes up a whole story about his friends dying to the Ikara organization in order to successfully kill Sasuke and Sai, which turns out to be unsuccessful. After finding out that the same organization he was part of set him up to die, he takes his own life by stabbing his neck with a kunai, being the first character to bring use to kunais in the Boruto series. Just then, the entire place begins to collapse and Sasuke spots the testing lab that will be very important moving forward whenever the anime gets to that point. So 2 things we've gathered from this episode: outer members and testing labs. The next couple episodes afterwards focus on Team Boruto heading over to Victor's lab due to a report of a researcher gone missing, and this is when we are first introduced to Mugino, best friend to Konohamaru. Mugino's first presence brought upon a serious tough guy attitude, who eases up a bit as episodes go on. But yeah, that's the image the anime wanted to present us with for his character. As the team approaches Victor's lab, this is also when we are officially introduced to the first inner Ikara member, being Victor, of course. The anime onlys don't know this, however, as he literally just seems like the man who runs the facility. They find the researcher, however, in a horrible state, who apparently has been tested on with the Hashirama cell. The mission now changes to Team 7 having to acquire the Hashirama cell at a black market in the Land of Silence, full of rogue ninjas and murderers of many kind. The team manages to find the whereabouts of the cell, only for a group of quadruplets to take it from them, and set up the entire town in pursuit of them, giving the quadruplets time to cover some distance. As Team Boruto manages to escape, they set off to find the culprits, but are stopped by 3 ninjas from the Hidden Cloud, one of them being a well-known Shippuden character in Omui, who agrees to work with Boruto in finding the Hashirama cell. However, they are stopped by Deepa, who finally introduces himself. Team Omui gets brave and takes on the challenge to stop him, while Team Boruto focuses on finding the cells. Of course, Deepa beats them vigorously as they can't even touch him. He kills both of Omui's comrades right after they spill the information on the whereabouts of the cell, a moment we are not used to seeing in the Boruto anime so far. Deepa literally just shoves his hand right through both their bodies. Clearly, he's a fan of Kakashi's work. Back to Team Boruto, they are put through different trials trials, as I like to call it, that the quadruplets set up. One willingly gives up their life in order to buy time for the brothers to escape, only for Team Boruto to figure out the trick with the monster and defeat it, destroying the barrier keeping them in place. The next brother is up, and well, even though he had intentions to sacrifice himself for the last brother to escape, Boruto manages to convince him to not kill himself. And as the two brothers and Boruto group up, they decide to team up in order to defeat Deepa, seeing him as a threat that may be too much for them to handle individually. Now this is when things get good. Just as the truce is made, Deepa sends cube-shaped projectile attacks literally raining down at the brothers, killing the youngest one and knocking out the oldest. Victor appears as well, revealing that he and Deepa are in fact working together. Victor separates the Jonins from the kids, and it's now that the battle begins. On Victor's side, I think I'll make this pretty brief. He beats up the two fairly easily. And as for Deepa, Team 7, as confident as ever, works together to take him down. I'm talking almost every jutsu they got in the book. What makes this fight so memorable is the fact that for the first time in this series, the team was sent home, not after defeating the villain, but after instead taking a beating themselves. This was one of the most pinnacle moments in the series because, like I said in the beginning, this arc was the introduction to the Ikara organization, who is structured from the manga. Victor and Deepa are representatives of the group. They are inner members. So of course they weren't going to get their asses handed to them, in the same way past Boruto villains typically get defeated. As Sarada sacrifices herself for Boruto to finish Deepa off with a Rasengan, Deepa intentionally acts like the Rasengan was doing anything just to laugh it off and completely wipe out any sense of pride and confidence Boruto had in himself. Like, he literally flicks Boruto like a bug, sending him flying. The final brother wakes and attempts to take Deepa with him, but even then, Deepa still comes out untouched, getting upset at the brother for not potentially hurting him, but the cell. After single-handedly defeating everybody, or so we thought, the boy Mitsuki pulls through and saves Boruto from a fatal crushing blow. Not in base mode, but in Sage, which I think a lot of people don't realize he speed blitzed past Deepa in order to save Boruto. It wasn't until the debris cleared that Deepa realized what happened, not that he saw Mitsuki save Boruto. This was also the first time Mitsuki performed a Sage mode attack called Sage Art Great Snake Lightning, which was a strong enough attack to buy them time to escape, although Deepa was unscattered once again. Okay, so I just want to pause and rewind a bit on what happened so far up to 166. We learned that Kara has outer members, then get introduced to 2 more, revealing 3 of the many members already. The theme of the anime changed up a bit, things start to become more uncensored. We were introduced to the testing lab that clearly belonged to Kara. We find out that the Hidden Rain village, the village Naruto promised to help recover, didn't, and it's in a worse position than it was during the Pain arc, meaning it did not recover at all after the effects of the 4th Great Ninja War, showing us that yes, even though the 5 nations are at peace and prospering, that doesn't apply to smaller nations who were clearly forgotten. And lastly, going back to the changing theme of the anime, we in the cast get our first ever real wake-up call. And if I'm going to be honest, this reason, I wouldn't say alone, but the change in direction with this arc, which makes it unique compared to any other arc we've gone so far in the anime, is why I list this as the better one compared to the other 2. With Victor, the anime has to follow off the story the general manga is telling, so if Team 7 was fighting him, we'd know Victor would win because we'd see him later in the manga. But with Deepa, that wasn't the case. When you had that Boruto final soundtrack playing as he struck Deepa with the Rasengan, everybody was implied to think that it was going to end there, that maybe Deepa would be like, you got me, you brat. I have to retreat to recover one day, but I'll be back for that Hashirama cell. I don't know, the same BS they pulled with Urushiki. But instead, they summoned a huge Uno reverse card by cutting out the soundtrack and having Deepa joke around that his attack was way too weak to even scratch him. You could tell through Boruto's reaction that he was so confused on what to do that it scared him. Like seriously, Deepa defeated every single person he faced without taking any damage. The only thing you could say really hurt him was Mitsuki's Sage Mode attack, where activating the transformation does more to him than the guy he fired off at. Like seriously, we're talking about Sage Mode, a type of energy that was used to counter the effects of the Truth Seeker orbs. And Deepa just casually gets up like it did nothing to him after taking a direct blow from a lightning style Sage enhanced attack. Real talk, besides Kashin Koji, Code, and Jigen, Deepa is probably my 4th favorite member. Now as a result of all this, we finally got some proper intense training. Well, intense for their age, between Boruto and Sarada, who went about their own separate ways. Sarada stuck with her father in order to master the Sharingan's boost in kinetic ability, who was also joined by her mother to improve her chakra control. Boruto was sent off to find Kakashi in order to help him develop more powerful attacks. With Kakashi, he was introduced to change in chakra nature, to where he applied a change in wind style to his Rasengan, which allowed him to perform wind style Rasengan. After realizing that this move wasn't nearly good enough to be labeled as a finishing blow, he knew that that he needed to work on something else. Meanwhile, Team Shikadai meets up with Team Shinki in the hidden sand to go out and find the puppet that was defeated during the Urashiki invasion arc. The problem is, so was deepa, and now the kids are put into the same dilemma that Team Boruto was in, where both sides are fighting for a possession over something that only one can have. And I wonder who wins this battle. Deepa returns to Victor empty-handed, however, due to Shinki destroying the puppet as a last effort move since he knows they can't stop him. After Shikadai returns from a pretty quick defeat, he helps Boruto develop a Rasengan that is actually strong enough to go against Deepa's defense, called the High Compression Rasengan. This is the second new Rasengan we are introduced to in the same arc. Kakashi lets Boruto test this out against Joji, which ends up leaving a giant hole in his chest, stating that had it not been for his shield, Boruto would have killed him. As for Sarada, this one can be explained pretty briefly. Through training with Sasuke and Sakura, she basically improves her kinetic sight and chakra control. That's mostly it. Although don't mistake my attitude for her training episodes being lackluster. With her training moments, the anime was able to reintroduce parts of the Mangekyo and its history with the wielders, while also giving us one of the best Sarada fights this series has to offer. Some pretty well done training episodes if I do say so myself. After their training has concluded, Boruto and Sarada head over back to Victor's lab to return, I believe, the ring of the man who was infected with the Hashirama cells back to the woman who called for their help in the first place. Meanwhile, Konohamaru and Mugino went undercover prior in order to sneak into Victor's lab, and it is then that we learn that Victor and deepa were actually betraying the Ikara organization by harvesting a plant that steals the chakra of the workers at the research lab in order to produce its own divine tree. With this tree, Victor will gain his lost body parts, and with deepa, he can finally know what it's like to taste food again and feel more human. Boruto and Sarada head on over to the plant and find Konohamaru along with Victor. Victor manages to separate the kids from the Jonin once again. The kids are then also met up with deepa. As for Mugino, however, he is on the run but is stopped by Victor's assistant who threatens to kill him, but is saved by Orochimaru, who literally evaporates her from existence. Orochimaru joins Konohamaru, who worries Victor a bit, but nonetheless, the two fight it out, both delivering fatal blows, only for them to continuously self-regenerate. As for deepa, he deals with Boruto and Sarada pretty easily at first. Deepa gets behind Boruto and attempts to deliver a killing blow, but is saved by Mitsuki, who was in critical condition at Orochimaru's lab after overusing Sage Mode during his first battle with deepa. The team, now stronger than before, tries to take on deepa, only for their moves to be ineffective. Deepa still beats the shit out of them. With Boruto on the ground, deepa sees an opportunity to finish him off. Sarada, however, jumps in and protects Boruto by sacrificing her own body. Furiously, she tells deepa that she plans to be Hokage, so death isn't an option till it happens, and awakens her second Tomoe Sharingan. And bro, when I saw this for the first time, I literally jumped out of my bed. It was like 4 in the morning too. They all go at it again, but just like before, nothing is working. Boruto, however, decides to use the High Compression Rasengan, currently his most powerful attack. Deepa, being as confident as ever, decides to clash his fist with this Rasengan, but in result, his armor starts to break, forcing him to summon his final defense. Boruto tries again to attack with the High Compression Rasengan. Sarada warns him that his arm won't be able to handle its power, but she should know that this is Naruto's son, a child who acts first and thinks later. Just before that, however, with Victor, the bud on the tree starts to open up. Victor rushes over to eat the fruit, just for the tree to turn against him and eat him up. Deepa sees the tree start to fall apart and grows furious. Boruto and Deepa again clash with the same attacks, but Boruto's compression isn't working as effectively. However, Mitsuki comes in and summons Sage Mode, infusing his chakra with Boruto's Rasengan. Sarada supports the two from behind with her strength in order to hold them still, creating the super high compression Rasengan that is basically a high compression Rasengan infused with Sage Mode chakra. This attack was more than enough to destroy Deepa's armor and send him flying. Deepa then spouts his final words, how he was so close to tasting the entire world, then gets crushed Obito style. In the aftermath, we find out that Mitsuki sacrificed his entire arm so Boruto didn't have to. Luckily though, his arm will grow back. And that pretty much wraps up the Ikara actuation arc. And honestly, I gotta stick by my opinion. I think Deepa's character really supported this arc and was a decent representation of how great of a threat Ikara can actually be. Like listen, y'all gotta understand Deepa was almost invincible against the cast he was going up against. Omui, who was a Kage nominee joined by 2 Jonins, couldn't even make him sweat. Team 7 couldn't do much. Deepa basically forced Mitsuki to activate Sage Mode, a transformation that can literally kill him, forced him to use a never before seen Sage Mode attack just to brush it off. 2 teams from both the Hidden Leaf and Sand couldn't even scratch him. He literally beat them while standing in one place. Then after motivating Boruto and Sarada to undergo tough training, he still ended up beating the shit out of them until Mitsuki appeared. And in order to destroy his final defense, it took a Sage Mode enhanced high compression Rasengan to do so. That didn't even kill him. Sure, he was paralyzed, I doubt he could move, but he was still alive. It was like some Kakuzu type shit to where even Naruto's Rasen Shuriken couldn't kill him despite being so powerful. Deepa didn't officially die until, like I said, got crushed Obito style. Yes, I know that we will will have greater villains who pose more of a threat in the future, but deepa was that first character, the one who at the time seemed so unbeatable, that every time you saw him fight, it was mildly entertaining because you knew he wasn't some lame rogue ninja that even Chojo could have taken by herself. Teamwork and believing in yourself wasn't the only factors here. It took hard work, training, and some sacrifices that led to this victory. This arc was unique on its own. It was informative. No other arc was similar to it. That's why it's as good as it is. We learned some things about Kara. Sarada unlocks her second Tomoe. We see Mitsuki use his first ever Sage Mode attack. Boruto learns 2 new Rasengans. Like honestly, take away the Chunin exam arc, this was easily the best arc in the show at that point. No arc comes close, not even the Shin arc that was written by Kishimoto. And that, everyone, is my personal explanation on why I think the Ikara Actuation arc was the best written arc, not even in 2020, but in general aside from the Chunin exams. If you disagree, I'd love to hear why in the comments down below. Thank you all for watching until the end, I really do appreciate it, and I'll catch you on the next one.